So welcome to the BS4CL session. Please have a seat. We are very happy to welcome you today. Last year there was already a session. This is the second time, so we are happy. So my name is Marie-Pierre. I am from HEC Paris, one of the schools from the BS4CL initiative, Business School for Climate Leadership, that was created at the COP21. 26, sorry, and 21. Voila. And we are very happy today with my colleague
Fernanda Corsi from IESE. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for being here.
to kick off with a panel of the deans of the business schools. We have the pleasure to welcome Francisco Veloso, Dean from INSEAD, Franz Heukamp, Dean from IESE, and two executive female speakers from Barbara Eggersnap from Malmö Port, Copenhagen Port, executive CEO of the port, and Anne-Sophie Castelnau from ING, Chief Sustainability Officer. And the panel will be moderated by Andrew Jack, Chief Editor of the Financial Times.
No, not education.
No, education. This will be the next step of your career.
Thank you for the promotion.
So the floor is yours. And so we have a 30-minute panel and then an interactive workshop moderated by
me, Fernanda Corsi again. So that's why I'm not speaking so much. You're going to hear my voice for another hour. So thanks for being here. We're very grateful. Welcome. Thank you.
Come and sit. Maybe you can sit in the front table. That's nicer. So now we stop. It's over to you.
Yes, do please come to the front. Yeah, it's like in the classroom, isn't it? Everyone hides at the back. And no computer screens open either. No browsing. So we've got a very an important session here today, obviously. And the key thing, both with our great speakers to kind of kick off the discussion and frame it, but then very much keen to get your collective wisdom to work on this sort of fundamental issue of developing and training the skills necessary for nature positive work in industry and government and beyond. And I think, maybe perhaps a start, and then so we'll have our 30-40 minutes discussion. I'll perhaps bring some of you in if you'd like to raise a few initial points as well with our panel. And then obviously we're going to have these breakout workshops to sort of for you to do a deeper dive and a report back over the following hour or so. But I think, perhaps the starting point has to be just thinking about the priority. And I think it's worth perhaps reiterating that, how important is, and how do we indeed define it? We'll dive into that in a little bit. But, whether we call it ESG, whether we call climate, whether, as here, we're trying to think particularly about nature positive approaches. We all know significant blowback at the moment, not least out of the US, but with quite a lot of follow-on effects in Europe and beyond. Francisco and I were just on a panel this morning with some survey data actually from alumni from business schools over many years. And actually they were asked what are the key societal challenges. And perhaps rather sadly, ESG was sort of pretty low down the priority list. So whether that's new, how representative it is, what the trend is, open to debate. But certainly it doesn't seem to be at the center of the policy debate this year or in the last few months. So, I'd love to start our panel with a little bit of a sort of sense from the different sides, students, faculty in business schools themselves, and indeed employers engaging with business schools, whether in recruitment from or engagement with for insights and for executive training and so on, how important you see that to be. So maybe perhaps we start with Barbara. Perhaps we'll start from the, as it were, the pull side in terms of what you see both in terms of your own operations and the kind of the needs internally to focus on this from engagement with clients and wider stakeholders.
Sure, thank you very much. Maybe just to put things in context, because the companies we represent are very different. We are a regional Danish-Swedish company. It's a port, so it ships in, ships out. It can be cruise ships, container ships, and so forth. And we're just 400 people. And I think that's important for the different approaches we've been taking. So a couple of years ago, we said our 25 strategy would be to become one of the world's most sustainable ports. And in that, we meant being net zero by the end of the last year in our own operations, while also finding new revenue models for future more green products. So that was what we set out to do 4 years ago. And everybody found that was extremely bold and probably too courageous, but I think that was absolutely necessary to kind of wake up everybody. And so it's difficult to find one skill set, I think, when you're an organization like ours. So what we did was to find whom do we need with, or who can actually represent a deep domain expertise in the areas we do not understand. So us being a maritime company, we were spending a lot of time in transitioning into green energy, and the ships will be transitioning into green energy. So we found people with deep domain expertise in that area and started off for them. Not only do they need to have the deep domain expertise, they also have to figure out how to bring that into the company. So it's two very different things. So it's about also connecting and working across the organization. So that's a lot of change management, and I know you all have got excellent courses on this, but it's definitely about how can we apply these new talents into, in our case, a very classic, old-fashioned culture to make that move. Yeah, we can talk more about that later on how we did that. So it's definitely to find out what kind of domain expertise would you need to actually carry out whatever you want to do, whether it's become net zero on your own or it's finding new revenue models or whatever that is. And in our experience, it's been different skill sets. And then finding out, what's the path to make that work so it's not aliens running around within your company. Yeah.
Thanks, and we'll dive deeper into sort of definitions and expertise and so on in a little bit. But Anne-Sophie, give us from your perspective, how important are these issues still today, if I could put it that way?
Yes, sure. So also to put things in context, ING is a Dutch financial institution. We are a big bank in Europe. 70% of our revenues are from Europe, and the rest is coming equally from the US or from Asia. And 4 years ago, the board decided to choose sustainability as one of our 2 strategic priorities. So what does it mean concretely? And the story is very much owned by the board, but it means concretely a big transformation of what we are doing. Because until 4 years ago, we were doing a lot of things basically in my department, and I was not there anymore. Or I joined in 5 years ago in that role of global head of sustainability. So lots of approaches, methodologies, and very technical type of thinking was there, but that was developed in isolation. That was really not part of how we were running our business. And the whole idea of putting the topic as a strategic priority was to say we want to embed that in the way we engage with our customer, the way we basically do our job as a banker. So it meant to bring the topic to the organization in terms of ownership, in terms of really changing, and that's a big change exercise. I completely agree with you that we have to go through to ensure that we bring the right skills and that we really basically upskill the organization. And that's not only hiring the right people, of course we need to hire the right people, but also we need to retrain and ensure that the people we have on board in the various teams we have, from front office to back office, going through risk, finance, and so on, have the understanding of what they are doing, of how we change the way we work with our clients. And that requires a massive training and upskilling plan.
So big demand. So more on the details in a little bit. But Frans, give us your perspective in terms of what you're seeing in terms of the appetite, the demand from both students incoming and indeed recruiters and employers that you're engaging with post graduation.
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me, and it's a great opportunity to, together with business leaders and, of course, Andrew, and as part of the Business School for Climate Leadership initiative, to get the opportunity to talk a little bit about this. I think the interest from the student side in sustainability-related topics and how to be a really competent leader in this, I would say, has not diminished, really. I think our students, so when we're talking about full-time students, so young master management students or full-time MBA students, are very much aware of what's happening in the world. And I think even though they may get sidetracked every once in a while by the occasional headline on other topics, I think fundamentally they have a clear sense of where the world is going, and they want to be part of solutions, of real solutions. And I think the offering is also there in terms of different courses, etc. I think it's true though that in the moment when it comes to a recruiting decision, the recruiting process, maybe that's not the thing that everyone is focusing on most. Maybe in the same way as you were discussing this morning, like what is the most urgent issue? But it doesn't mean it's not there, because students also look very much at what the companies are doing in general, how they think about sustainability. They do look at the businesses, the markets they're in, and they do want to be part of some kind of organizations more than others. So in that sense, I think it's really there. And maybe the most important thing I think that a business school can help to do is actually reinforce this, what I would like to call an ecology mindset, and ecology really broadly defined. So this is not just about nature, this is about nature, but this is also about communities. That's about any kind of space that you're operating in as an organization and as an individual, and to understand that you are never just there on your own. You can do business because there is a configuration, there is a society, there is all kinds of things that are already there that make it possible for you to do things, and you need to contribute to strengthen this further. You can't just say you're not involved. You need to get involved. And I think that mindset, and I think ecology in the broad sense, and the original meaning, I think is the way, and that I think is the most important thing maybe that a business school can reinforce in many different ways, with projects, with encounters, with all kinds of things.
Excellent. And we'll definitely come back to some of the initiatives, current and ideas for the future. But Francesco, tell us first from your perspective, demand.
I don't think it also, like Franz, I don't think that it changed very significantly. I think, when we look at our population, there's always, there's a distribution of people, and especially for us, because, we're extremely global, with people coming from all over the world. And, a priori, their industry, their country, their location is also shaping how much they are just aware, for example, because of past education, how much it was present in their own company, and you do see a huge diversity of that. So you have from people that are extremely committed and are evangelizing everybody around them, for those that are kind of like still discovering. I do see a generational shift. I think the level of awareness on the younger generations is more significant. So if I go from, say, executive MBA to master in management for the average student, I think that that's more present. But I've not seen like a major shift that has happened over the last year in terms of that. What I think has some evolved a little bit, but if you channel that properly, you can do that in a positive way. Is I would say less virtue signaling, right? So this idea that I care about this as a way to signal your virtue. And much more direct conversations in terms of the business case, the business motivation, the business rationale becomes much quicker, more present. And this resonates with some of the points that you were making about, okay, how do we link this to the business? And so that idea of CSR, which is we have a business, and then outside of the business we have some kind of responsibility. That's what I think is a shift. Is that no, if you're going to have a conversation, let's have a conversation as part of the business, and not something that is kind of a complementary or side part. And I think that is an element of revolution, of evolution. Now, for us, in terms of a school, I mean, we take this as part of, preparing responsible leaders. I mean, our motivation, and often I've been asked the question about, but how do you see this as a business school, given what's happening in the world? I mean, our initial motivation was not political. Our initial motivation was scientific. I mean, the science is pretty clear. What led us to take this stand, to make sure that we are pushing, climate, nature, etc., is because the science is unequivocal, and we are a research-led organization. So that's not changed in that regard. And so when we think about preparing the next generation of responsible leaders, which is our mission, this has to be part of it if we know that this is happening. So that's there. And in our case, this has percolated through the curriculum. And so we disperse it across all our core courses and also our capstone in terms of the training of the students. We also do a lot of executive training. And the specific courses where we've seen a change there is the specific courses that we offer in sustainability, because from the beginning they were very much business oriented and kind of like bringing that to the core of your business and strategy oriented. The demand for that has actually continued to be quite strong. Where we've seen a shift is how often many of our custom programs that we do, the companies are asking us to include a module that addresses some of these. There, we've seen in certain geographies, in certain environments, a lower prevalence vis-a-vis other things. So I think it's much more quicker now that they're asking us to include, say, a day in geopolitics than a day in sustainability. And that is some element of concern. It's not so much about our students, but more about what our clients tell us. And you know, of course, we push for that, but we're also a client-driven, organization in terms of that part of our activity.
So yeah, it seems to me there's this sort of shift perhaps from greenwashing to green hushing in communication terms to some degree. But at the same time, that touches on the point, doesn't it, about are we now needing and hopefully moving towards a more focused and perhaps a more business-oriented language or essence of what it is. I mean, you talked about ecology, you talked about sustainability, we talk about nature positive. I mean, there's lots of different elements in this. I mean, what do you think should be the core focus of this sort of approach and skills going forwards? Franz, do you want to start?
Yeah. So I think the key a little bit is in line of the trying to be positive, about contributing more to what we mentioned, what Paul Pullman wrote with I think Andrew Winston it was on net positive, where he was so basically saying let's frame the discussion in a different way. Let's not talk about virtue signaling or finding reasons to, or even well, moral reasons are good reasons too, but actually say let's make a business case, for sustainability for organizations that really, as part of the work they do, fundamentally are actually contributing to make the entire ecology, if I can say that again, actually stronger. And I think that's a little bit where the mindset that we can foster. I think there's also specific industry questions then that we can help. Fernanda introduced a little bit before the Sustainable Leadership Institute, and we try to do this actually with businesses. So we have 10 companies that are from all different sectors that are part of the discussion with our faculty. So the research also comes in, and so we have run, for example, with Mango is on the fashion side. The fashion industry has huge challenges about how they organize their supply chains and how they produce, etc. And they're aware of that, and they want to do a better job, and they need help of how to do this. So you can bring in operations specialists, you can bring in people who can talk with them or help them think differently about their business model in the first place, and do this in an open way, by the way. So it's not just for the organization, but it's actually an industry-wide phenomenon, and so this is one case, or we the other day just had a presentation of actually an INSEAD alum, who is running a very interesting business, I think, in Paraguay, where he's trying to basically reinvent the way agriculture is being done there, using a lot of high-tech equipment, very sophisticated technology. So again, great business decisions with the idea of actually regenerating, not only having a good business in terms of what the agriculture is producing in terms of food, etc., but also a way that actually regenerates the surroundings where all of that is taking place, because he's very well aware of that. Otherwise, his own business will suffer. So I think these are ways of shaping the mindset that there is a business case if it's well done, and that good business leaders should know about how to do it, and again also a case for collaboration. We mentioned this before, between industry and the business schools. So like the Mango case, the fashion industry, etc.
So yes, well, Francisco, let's do it from the inside first as well. So again, I mean, we hear a lot more talk now, don't we, about resilience, about risk, supply chains, and so on. I mean, how would you break down perhaps the key skills, expertises that need to be provided?
I think there are different levels, right? I mean, there are, as was mentioned also on the business side, there are technical knowledge, specific knowledge that needs to exist that is quite important. I think that if I think about some of what we can do, and sometimes we do that through electives that are maybe more specialized on, for example, on the regulatory elements, on the accounting side, for example, that are out there, so where you can dig much deeper on that. When we think about the more general elements, I mean, I think all of these aspects of reconceptualizing your business model. So how do you think about your business model? How do you strategize around that? How do you mobilize change? These are skills that are applied elsewhere, but they are absolutely essential for these rethinking some of the elements related to what we need to put forward to be able to address the climate challenge in a business oriented way. And so that is a very important mindset that we bring to the training on both what we offer to all the students and what we do in terms of the executive training, together with kind of like the entrepreneurial mindset, this idea that you need to change. And one thing that is very important is also the collective action, the notion that a lot of the things you do have to understand that there are things that for you to be able to do, you have some other partner, some other element of the supply chain needs to also do other things. And so you need to mobilize change often beyond what happens inside the organization. And this is important that we also signal that. And so the Business School for Climate Leadership collaboration is also a way for us to show that in this big topic, there are things that we can and should be collaborating, because when we put our alumni together in a conference to look at certain things, to share some of the case studies that we're developing so that it's more accessible and more visible, to be present here and in other places, is part to say, yes, we realize that some of it requires collective action, and we ourselves as organizations want to do that as business schools. On the practical side, precisely also similar to what you were what you were saying, one of the areas where we've seen huge traction in terms of a lot of the work that we do with companies, for example, in the area of circularity, where there is now a very, very clear business case that you can do on the back of that. And a couple of our faculty, we have something called the Sustainable Business Initiative that has been built on the back of collaborations directly with companies, where that has been very, very prevalent. And it's a very interesting cycle where we work with the companies on problems that they have, that generates research. It also generates case studies that we use to train our students and to train our executives. So it's a very enabling kind of like system. And more broadly, we created a few years ago our Hoffman Global Institute for Business and Society, that is quite important instrument to both enable the change internally, to develop research, develop case studies, but also to allow us to engage externally, to be part of that collective thinking, and to also disseminate what we do is also, through the Hoffman Institute, that, for example, we support the Business School for Climate Leadership on the side of INSEAD. So these are some of the different elements that we have to put together to make sure that these skill sets are present there.
We'll come back to the leadership network in a minute, but Anne-Sophie, what's from your perspective, if you break down sustainability as you frame it, what does that mean in practical terms, and what sort of specific skills or qualities do you see the need for training in, or indeed where you might look to business schools to provide that expertise?
So sustainability for us is basically three things that we see completely interconnected. That's climate, nature, and people, social dimensions. And more and more, we have proof point that those topics, they influence each other, they build on each other. So initially, we were really, and we are still, to some extent, developing methodologies so as to track progress and monitor the direction in isolation. But more and more, we see the need to connect those elements with each other, and they reinforce each other. So this is what we are doing, and this is what we are doing on the risk front. And we are a banking organization, so we are, to some extent, we are all risk managers. But also we see that on the opportunity side of things, and when we have a conversation with a client, and I'm sorry, I'm a banker originally, but this is really what it is about. This is about understanding what we are financing and how we can, I would say, accelerate the transformation those clients are in, because this is also what we are noticing. So what do we need so as to be successful? I think we need people indeed who are ready to embrace the change. And this is probably an essential quality, that open mind, that ability to listen and to take on board new insight and to look for learning and developing is absolutely key. And this is really qualities when we hire new staff, be it internally, by the way, or coming from external, that's definitely top on our mind. We need people also who know how to work in collaboration with each other. I mean, no one can be successful in isolation, so this is also something that is key and that we reward internally. Collaboration is at the core of all what we are doing. And we want people also who are able to be, we call it a step ahead, so who see things coming, who are able to depict trend, and who are able to bring that into the organization and find solution with others. As I said, bringing change and working with others. So I would say this is the key elements for which indeed we are grateful to find institutions who are able to grow and indeed plant seeds that then we can harvest when people are working with us.
Well, a lot of those qualities are broader skills rather than ones that are quite specific to sustainability. In fact, yeah. So you don't necessarily see the need for your, let's say, your new recruits to have come with those more specific financial skills around, I don't know, sustainability.
Of course, we also need for specific roles, and depending where they sit, we need experts, and we hire experts. I mean, I have data experts who are specialized in nature project or in climate project. But the number of them is relatively limited. And what we need is indeed people who are able to switch job and to bring what they've learned somewhere to another area, who move from risk to finance, from finance then to front office, and who are able to connect all the dots so as to be, I would say, full-fledged executive and future leader in the organization, who are going to have a DNA that includes sustainability.
And Barbara, from your perspective, what would be again, those sort of skills or values you're looking?
Really boring. Completely agree with Anne-Sophie. But I think, and while you were talking, I was just thinking a lot of this is good old-fashioned leadership skills, right? That I think we were taught. It's 25 years ago since I was graduating with my MBA, but a lot of it is still the same. But then there wasn't a line of business called sustainability, right? We had other lines, but so you've been adding some, and I guess today everybody would also agree we need to know a little bit about geopolitics or something else, right? So I think that's a natural progress of the schools and of the education, that whatever we are going to need in order to make the right decisions right now, both being robust and resilient and doing everything short term and long term, and I guess, you know, all these buzzwords that all of us are facing at the moment, right? I mean, I guess you will just need to deliver faster and faster, like the most people in the organizations will, right? And then I hope, and that's perhaps on a more personal note, it will also teach them to take speed out of things, right? I think everything is accelerating at a speed that is not, it's just not healthy anymore. Not to people, definitely not to the planet, but also not to executives, right? So I think a lot of the healthy mindset needed for top executives in the future will be also actually to calm down an organization and figure out between all that noise what is it actually we're going to move on, and be very clear about what are our positions and how do we get there, and then filter through all that noise, because that's stressing a lot of people right now.
So let's talk a little bit just about what's been done to date, some specific examples, and then thinking about next steps. Frans, you talked about Mango, for example, and those centres, institutional centres. What else are you doing that perhaps is, you know, cutting edge and you're really excited about in this space?
Well, so we talked about the projects now with students. So we also have a capstone end of year simulation. It's actually a week-long simulation, which is students are very excited about, and that has evolved also. This used to be a very traditional operational kind of, you know, you basically simulate the life of a executive committee, and students take roles and things happen, you know, and then you have to deal with bankers and you have to deal with union representatives and all these kind of things. And now you also have to deal with problems, that that have to do with sustainability risk. It's like disruptions in your supply chain, in your operations, etc. So I think that's just part of it, to make it really part of the normal business kind of issues that you need to be able to deal with. And then we have we like to also involve the students in these kind of projects that we do, like the one with Mango. So we have some ambassadors, so where we give students the opportunity to be part of these kind of projects that we do from the Sustainability Leadership Initiative. And of course, then maybe this is the moment also to mention a little bit what we do, some of the things we do together. So I think Business School for Climate Leadership was founded indeed on the occasion of I think it was the Glasgow COP, and the question was, okay, what can we do together? And so we have been pooling a little bit the alumni learning programs, so where we try to share expertise in this way and give our alumni access to expertise on the issue that is available in other institutions. We've been writing cases together. We do write cases together that we also distribute under this label, so to make them clearly identifiable also and easy to find. And maybe, I don't know, most importantly also, we have a PhD course now, so we jointly actually educate future business educators on aspects. In this case, it has to do with finance precisely. So this is very much the project at the heart of one of the founders of the initiative at the time, and I think that's probably an important contribution, because we talked about graduates, we talked about what organizations do, but there's a very important figure, namely the business school educators, so faculty, and both permanent and those that come in. And so what do they actually know? What's their mindset, and how can it become part of their, let's say, also career perspective, and make it part of their publishing record, etc. So that's also a very important contribution, I'd say.
So Francisco, both a couple of maybe internal INSEAD innovations, and then maybe other points to the business school leadership initiative jointly.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I mean, some of the most interesting projects was what we've done in terms of working with companies, that we are continuing and expanding, because the model has been very successful, and this is something that we're doing in different industries with different partners, typically sometimes also gathering some that are non-competing, so that they can learn from each other. So that model has also been very interesting, and this is something that we want to scale. The other aspect that we've been investing some time has been to also connect more to the global south, to learn from what's happening in other parts of the world. I think sometimes even in our own environments, we tend to basically over rely on what's happening in the in the northern hemisphere and in the more advanced economies. And especially this year, on the back of the COP30 in Rio, we did a specific engagement with Brazil, and we created with support from Suzano, a Brazilian company that is actually quite advanced in sustainability. We create the INSEAD Suzano Progress Initiative that is about exploring some of the most innovative business models that are coming out of these emerging economies as actually examples for other parts of the world, because there are, in some of these, especially when we're talking about native positive, in places like Brazil and all of Latin America, but other parts of the world, there are amazing initiatives and amazing companies that are quite at the cutting edge. And I think that this is something that is much less visible. And this is something that specifically that we've been doing to try to make it more visible, exactly through our own instruments as academia, which is writing cases, doing research, engaging, doing conferences there. And this is another area that we would like to further expand and extend, because there's a lot to be learned. And I think it challenges sometimes some of the assumptions that we have about where are the most cutting edge and interesting things being done, and always kind of looking at some of the regions. So those are a couple of examples. I mean, we're also collaborating on research, as educators, in terms of Business School for Climate Leadership. One of the things that we've been doing in these regards, which is related to our presence here, but our presence in other places, for example, Change Now, is precisely to be associated and leveraging some of the events and initiatives that are out there to mobilize collective action around some of these issues, and to find solutions to also engage with that, and that being both showcase for what we're doing individually and collectively, and as instruments of engagement as well. And I think that that's been very, very interesting, and certainly with for example, Change Now, that's been a very, very productive partnership, and here with Davos as well, with Intent for some years, and this is something that will continue, that we want to continue. We're also, for example, exploring how we can do the same with Building Bridges, which is another event that happens here in Switzerland, and a few others. So that's another set of elements, and we're making some of these case studies available to all business schools. So we're starting a program with the Case Center, by which each of the schools are making freely available some sustainability business cases to make it available for many places, for example, even in emerging economies where they cannot pay to access this case because it's expensive, right? I mean, if it's $5, $6, $7 per case, multiply the number of students, it's really difficult for many faculty in certain parts of the world. So that's all things that we're doing. What I wanted to highlight, which is also an important challenge, and this is why the training of the next generation of faculty that Franz was mentioning is quite important, is that one of the barriers that exists internally is actually the division of knowledge. So faculty work by being specialized in a very specific area, and very often they have difficulty themselves relating what they do to the sustainability front because they're working on some specific aspects. I don't know, they may be working on something related to optimization of supply chains across suppliers, and they've just not looked at the sustainability element of that, and sometimes they feel themselves that it's hard for them to enter because they're not specialized, because they're used to be specialists as part of their ethos. And some of these are also sometimes very technical areas, but that do connect to the main area of knowledge. And that bridging is also an important thing. That's why it is important to connect faculty, to connect things on the research side, because there are internal barriers of knowledge that are to be broken internally in each of our schools to make it more productive and more integrated, even across what we do as a business school. And I think that that's certainly true for INSEAD, but I think it's true for all business schools.
So we're going to move into the final bit and then open it up a little bit and go into the workshops. But so on that question of bridging, what more could be done? I mean, Barbara, maybe looks like you.
Yeah, no, but I just had an add-on to what you just said. I think this, when you mentioned the emerging markets, I think that's super relevant. But I think it's just as relevant for a lot of players who are not large, right? I mean, the difference between Anne-Sophie's companies and ours. So when we set out to say, okay, we want to be one of the most sustainable ports in the world, yes, that was super bold, being a relatively small port compared to a lot of very large ones. But that doesn't mean you can't do it. But you need examples of how did somebody else do this before, right? Or that's at least inspiring. So coming back, maritime and transportation companies are huge emitters, right? So we have a common big problem. So I was in a lot of conferences. And so you come back and on a Monday morning you go, well, that's great. But what do I do now? We have 400 people, and how do we actually tackle this, right? I can't wait for everybody else. So what we've done is super local, or regional at least, right? So everybody we're working with, whether it's on new businesses, on CO2 capture or green energy production, whatever it is, are local regional people. So we can meet within 30 minutes, an hour, which has been absolutely instrumental in driving this forward, because there is no clear path on this, right? And I think that's the biggest change in working with this line of business, because nobody taught us, right? So we're learning while you're learning in the business schools, right? So I think figuring out how can I get inspired to do something within my own sphere of resources and is super interesting and relevant. So, and then the other part of what you were just saying, everything we did from then on has also been, classic change management, right? Getting everybody involved, making it personal, having everybody put a little post-its on the wall, whatever it was. So we now have everybody, employees, as agents for this change because they want to, not because we tell them to, right? So, but that's something we also learned 25 years ago.
And so if you were throwing out the challenge to business schools about what more they could do, what would you like to see?
So exactly, some of this was just to strengthen that,
Smaller,
right? Yeah,
locally
because
focused.
there's still, there are few very large companies, but most of us are still in the middle sphere of size, right? So there's a limit to resources and what you can buy and just roll out. So I think the inspiration is super important, and learning from somebody your own size. So when you do your programs, I think it's really relevant that you have smaller companies in there as well, because otherwise you go, well, that was super interesting, but it's nothing to do with me, right? If you don't have the same budget or the same resources, right? And since you're doing this because you all need this change and want this change, then I think it's super relevant to have that included.
And Anne-Sophie, what about you? What do you think is still missing, or what more could business schools do to help this process of what you need?
Yeah. Well, I think businesses are doing quite well so far. I mean, we are working with some of them with some of people in the room, and we are quite happy. We are in particularly happy to be able to co-design specific programs. And that's extremely valuable, and we do that both for leaders, but even more for I would say board -1 that we want to train on sustainability matters, and it was extremely helpful to really be able to sit together and co-design what was really needed by our organization. So that sort of ability to tailor specific programs, really answering the clear needs that we had identified, is very appreciated. So that's something that we really value.
And Franz, what more would you like to see going forward? So either the network of the business schools for climate leadership, or indeed from employers to help build the resources and the training that you're trying to prepare?
Well, I didn't know I would get to put a wish list here on the
Why not?
on the table. So no, I mean, so I think maybe just on the BS4CL front. So I think just like any other organizations in other sectors, we have our challenges in working together because of how we're organized and how we do things. Actually, we are. I think you see, we have good instruments. You have the Hoffman Institute. We have the Sustainable Leadership Institute. That's actually why we are organized internally in a way that we can connect better on this specific issue with other schools. And so one of the things I think would be great if precisely also organizations, because this is in the end funded also by alumni, by corporations, and it's not just about the funding in terms of the money, it's the interest also, no? I mean, when I mentioned the Mango case, the other 10 organizations, it's the willingness to actually engage on the topic in a meaningful way, meaning that you're willing to open your books and so that you can really share with the faculty, with non-competitors, so it's not about a competitive threat, what's going on, and also have I think the willingness to learn. So which means you have to, in the first place, be willing to you say you don't know everything, So I think that's a very important part also of this process. So I guess more engagement on that front would be would be on the wish list. And and then I think also the way as you're working for the Financial Times, I think it's also helpful to precisely get a voice, Also, I mean, you're already providing a good bit of that in the specific pages of the Financial Times education part, and you've been very instrumental in doing this. I think also, again, talking more about this and having spaces to reach larger audiences, I think would also be high on the wish list.
Okay. Francesco?
I think a couple of things on the collaboration, and we were commenting about this in preparation for the session here. I think that on shifting the mindset, I think there is a dialogue to be had between the business schools and the employers in terms of the transition of these graduates, so that they have that in mind as the importance as they come into the companies, that they need to be prepared, that they need to come with the right mindset. And as it was mentioned, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a whole different set of skills from some of the skills that they are developing, but realizing that a very important part of application and energy of direction for those skills is to these types of problems. And this is something that they can make a real difference and get them excited about contributing to the organization through these lenses. And how do we create an environment where that is more present as they're working through their program and into transition into their employment. I think that's an important thing that we need to think about. How do we make it more visible and more salient, so that's more on the top of mind of them as they're going through the program and as they're thinking about their next stage of their career. I think that's one very interesting area to do more. I think there's room to beef up this aspect of collaborating between the business schools in terms of the next generation of leaders. because of the way that the system works. Because PhD programs are very small and very specialized, and very typically the sustainability gain falls kind of between the cracks. I mean, you have a program in finance and you have a program in marketing, and you may have somebody in marketing that's looking at sustainable consumption, but it's not really a specific training at that level. But there may be somebody that's doing that at INSEAD and somebody that's doing that at IESE, and actually would be nice if they could be working together. So there is a space there also on training the next generation of leaders that I think could be very helpful to get them better prepared in whatever area that they're working, that they understand how to connect these. And some of the research conferences and others that we're doing are starting to help, but there's a lot of work to be done there. So those are two examples of dimensions that I think there's important work to be done.
Okay, perfect. Do you want to go straight to workshops, or should we ask one or two people in the audience if they want to throw out a couple of questions?
Yeah. The idea now is just put into practice a little bit and see our understanding about nature, positive, disruptive business models, and combine it with business resilience. Since we're not a super large group, we dedicated more time to the panel as well, because I think we're going to be a little bit faster in some of our practical exercises. I would like to be thankful to the panelists. I don't know if all of them they're joining us for the workshop, Andrew. So in any case, like if you have other commitments as well, we're very thankful to this first participation as well. Mentioned that we have alumni in the room as well from all different schools as well, and Sophie as well is from IMD, so it's interesting to mention that like our business schools are being represented here, if not by 14 members, but by alumni as well. So we really appreciate your presence. And final remarks, I think if you want, just wrap it up and then we start it.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone feels there's anything burning that we've missed in terms of helping seed the workshop over the next hour. Just anything else that perhaps our participants want to mull as part of the process. A final word.
Maybe happy to start. Very important for me these days to, I would say, get rid of the noise and stay the course. We are doing great. Lots of transformation are happening, and we need to believe, all of us, that we have indeed a clear direction and confidence in what we are doing, provided it is science-based. So voilà, my message is let's not be distracted by what's happening around us.
Very much the same. I think we're stepping up. Somebody else is stepping down, as we talked about before this session. And I think if you know your customers really well and your industry really well, you also know where this is going. Maybe not short term, but long term. And we went into this because we thought it was the right thing to do, and also because we thought it was going to give us a competitive edge. And it has, I have to say. And that was, you have to make those decisions before everybody else does also, right? That's like in any other game of business. So yeah, that will probably be my last note. Yeah. When we were looked at in the beginning, people thought we were these crazy hippies from the north, right? Where a lot of our clients are multinationals, big American corporations and stuff, and like we were kind of spoiling the very fun game 5-6 years ago where growth rates only look like one thing, right? Now they call us and ask us, when is all this stuff ready, right? Whether it's shore-based electricity and stuff like this, right? So yeah, but that's a bit when you start, like any other investment.
Just a point actually to complement this, which is, I think one of the, and this is the role that we need to play as business schools, is the fact that this staying the course and that we're starting to have results also creates a very important both need and opportunity, which is to make it more visible, to precisely show that things are happening, that things are having effect, that things are having an impact. And this connects to the point you were making earlier, that the survey that you were talking about earlier, that says that this is not as visible as it needs to be. I think we need to show that it's happening, that it's making a difference, to make people better aware and to normalize the conversation. And so that some of this retreat that we're saying in terms of some of the conversation also disappears, because it becomes just normal. And it's normal because it's important, and you talk about the things that are important, all of them. You just don't hold back some, and this is one of the many that are important.
Franz, maybe any final thoughts, particularly for our attendees as they debate on what help or insights they might provide that would be useful?
No, I would just say it's clearly a very fundamental issue. Other things come and go, and they're the taste of the day. This is a really fundamental issue, and I think fundamentally about helping people to do business that really works for people both today and in the future. And I think that's therefore also I think the overarching important mindset that we need to support and find ways of then designing and executing practical solutions for that. So I think that's and of course it's sometimes very difficult to insist in the really fundamental issues that get displaced in the news and in the mindset of people.
Yeah. So we've heard about practical examples about the need to expand perhaps geographically to the south, to smaller companies and so on, and to sort of deeper dives and support in thematic areas, including circularity and so on. I suppose, that perhaps might be some of the challenges for your discussions to think about, what it really means, what are the skill sets, how far specific skills around, however we define it, sustainability are, really core, and how they could be best provided both within business schools and between business schools, and how to build those more active bridges to employers who are focused on these things. Perhaps those would be great to hear your insights over the coming hour. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How we can learn together, share expertise, how you can Thank you very much. No. What? Yeah, we're
Thank you very much.
we have some necessary leverage a little bit from the pioneers, so we're defining yeah.
This is a perfect timing for us. We usually get in, help either educate or there's some procurement ideas. We run also education sessions on biogen, for instance.
Exactly, that's right. Exactly.
Most of the banks do.
Of course, I will share with all of you my emails, okay?
I feel like it's a good timing to talk to you.
Of course. Of course. Yeah, just
Perfect. Yeah, this is
it's better to send here instead of my email, is that?
Frankfurt.
Yeah.
Ingo van der Leer. Jürgen.
Okay.
I met him very briefly.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Yeah. Discuss a little bit, understand the knowledge about the different concepts. Carried with nature positive, understand what lacking, how they understand bridging this more in those lines. Okay. Thank you. Bear with me, the ones who are here, and we can do a shorter workshop. The idea really is understand a little bit of your understanding of all these different terminologies: sustainability, nature positive, business resilience, and see how we understand our businesses within these different terminologies, no? In which step we are, or how can we commit what we're doing, how we are committing within our roles, our positions in our companies, and how do we think that we can help to foster more resilient businesses. We can be a lot faster, I guess. It would be more interesting if we were a larger group. But let's start. Wait. Should this? Ah, yeah. Okay, I did twice. The idea was to have two parts, and we have some exercises for the two of them, and I might choose the ones that are more interesting for each one of them. Part one is more focused on understanding the differences between business resilience, nature positive, what it really means to be challenged as a company to become a nature positive, and what it means in terms of this concept to our business resilience. And the second part was more focused on transformative leadership models, what type of skills, capabilities, and what we can actually do within our companies to foster this kind of leadership that it's more focused on applying nature positive strategies into the business models. And a quick summary and takeaway, which we did part of it already on the panel. I click, but yeah. But just to move forward. Okay, well, no big issue. Let's start. First part, I would like to, since we're a small group, if we can introduce yourselves within your group. We're going to be working in groups. Like one person's going to be speaking out loud. Thank you. Thank you very much. Speaking out loud just to share a little bit of the exercise. So if you want to get to know each other very fast, make it one group, right? We're just... or not. Let's keep how we are because maybe you have more time to discuss here while they have more time to discuss here, and then we just share. Yeah. So that's it. If you just can introduce yourself, please, name, role, company, kind of like a elevator pitch, kind of like fast to your own peers, your own.
Is this your phone?
No. Maybe when? Or when? Is this your phone here? Okay.